Hi, welcome to another in my intermittent series of videos called Heart and Craft, where I talk to independent artists on in various fields about the obstacles we all share getting our art to our audience. Jeff Minch, of course, is an independent video game developer, and the obstacles that he faced are shared by many, if not all, independent artists. And I want to believe that if we share our stories, maybe we can find some common ground and some ways that we can help each other get our art out into the world. So to that end, I interviewed Andrew Pappas. Andrew Pappas is a games marketing consultant and strategist. He works with independent video game developers to help them find their target markets and get their games into the hands of the audience. He's also the host of the indie game movement podcast, and I wanted to ask him from his unique perspective about how he sees the current state of the indie video game business. So, without further ado, Andrew Pappas. Andrew Pappas, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you sharing your time with me. Um,
Yeah, of course, and really appreciate you having me here to have this discussion because it definitely is an important one.
right. I mean, so for context, I know you a little bit from Keene State College, from film school. We're in the same film program together.
Yeah,
Um, but and then we lost touch as human beings do, and I reconnected with you recently because you and I share a common cause. Why don't you tell us what you do?
yeah. So I am a games marketing consultant, primarily for independent developers and studios. And what does that consist of? I would say primarily from everything from, starting with the projects in early development and just kind of helping guide teams throughout their process of development. Not so much on the development, but how do you take what you're doing and apply it to marketing, whether that be a strategy or tactics or anything else along those lines? I just basically help guide teams with their marketing efforts.
That's excellent because like a lot of independent artists, like visibility is a bit of an issue, and finding your audience can be
Yeah,
an issue.
absolutely.
So the fact that I've gotten to this point where I find the indie dev cause is like the hill I want to fight on. It's so fascinating that you've been doing this for years. It's what brought you to this? Why did this become your mission?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because it's like, when I go back in terms, especially, it's really interesting how this conversation like goes back to us in a way, right? Going to the same program. So my essentially my story was when I was going through that program, I think most of our goals there to some extent were, hey, we would love to be like an independent, filmmaker or whatever in whatever capacity. And throughout that process and going through the program, I quickly learned that, hey, wait, in order to, you know, do this, especially as an independent, you kind of need to know how to market yourself or your product or, whatever it is you're creating. So, in that realization, in time, I basically just made a career out of marketing. So, I went from film to marketing. And but throughout that whole process, even well before college, I just always had this appreciation and when I was younger, almost like to some maybe my parents would probably call it this as like addiction to games, right? Always passionate about games and such. As I think most of some of us were in like the 80s growing up with like Nintendo and Super Nintendo and all those other systems. And again, so I just had this passion, and then in time, I started seeing how the indie game scene was like very new and upcoming. I mean, I remember like when titles like Bard or even Minecraft were like these like little things that just blew up into something much bigger than I think anybody ever really anticipated, and that was a really
Right.
exciting time. And I was like, I saw that as well. I love games, and I'd love to maybe contribute more of to this community in some way. And through that lens, I started to see, oh, look, there's a lot of people who might not necessarily have the help or resources they need, especially when it comes to marketing. And now that I've had this career and also like passion with marketing, and then also the need and kind of desire to be more involved with the indie game community. That I just saw how the two aligned, and in time, I just made it a point and eventually made myself, start serving this particular audience, this particular community. So that's kind of like the progression and how that story went.
It makes perfect sense. It feels like a very organic sort of thing to happen for you. It's the it is a community. There are I don't think people appreciate how many indie game developers there are. It shocked me. And that it's easy to get lost in the noise. That people
Yeah.
releasing stuff, or they release it for like reasons. There's some people trying to do smaller versions of what the AAA companies are doing, but some people are doing like these really niche um, artistic expressions, really. So, uh, but in order to find an audience, people have the same hill to climb. What are the typical, well, common things that you've experienced with some of your clients in terms of
It,
like
it,
obstacles they need to overcome?
yeah. I mean, I would say for them, the main one comes down to having the right understanding and mindset. So let's position it this way. A lot of time, I mean, everybody has the same problem. What you called out to already a bit is, hey, how do we get more awareness? How do we do these things? Like it's more phrased of with the idea of how, right?
Mhm,
And I think the problem with this particular way of approaching things, it's not that you don't need the how or you can't or that can't benefit you. It definitely can and it is needed. But when focusing on this, it becomes, I would say, very tactical. And by nature, I've noticed over time that a lot of developers are very tactical oriented. And what I mean by that is, I mean, look at the nature, especially if you're looking at, let's say solo devs or even broader than that. They're really focused on, and again, everybody's different. Every position might uh, involve different characteristics. But if you're always in the weeds in terms of like development, coding, and and programming and all these different things, you almost develop a certain type of mindset to really hone in and focus on these particular things. So when you get so caught in the details, the how, metrics, analytics, all these things um, come to head or become maybe a priority. And while these are still important things to consider, what happens is we start to lose out on what is the why, what is the intent, what's really
mhm,
like backing these things, because the how is still important. But if you anybody could have a list of how to do something, but if you don't have a need for it, or if you don't have where it's what you're trying a problem whether you have a problem or not, or don't know what that problem is, then the how isn't necessarily going to get you to whatever that result you may want. And I
mhm,
think that's the biggest challenge that they have. And also like kind of one of my own challenges, because sometimes I come across people that don't necessarily look at things from the why perspective or the intent. They look at things from the how do I do this? And again, it's about coming up and having them understand this mindset. And it's not everybody, but still having this idea that hey, the why is just as important as the how, because it's going to ultimately give you some further direction.
right, right. I mean, it's one of the first things that I was always encouraged to do is to keep a journal. And like on the front page, write down why you're doing it. Because, like I said, when you get stuck in the weeds, you just forget. I was like, why am I doing this
Right.
again? And you start like you start getting led by the nose by problems instead of like using like this target as like a something to aim towards and figure out proper solutions. It's exactly what you said.
Right. And
It's yeah.
you make a great point there too, because then it's like then I think in a way what you just shared it almost becomes more reactive. Then you're like, oh, I got this problem to solve, and I have this problem to solve. But then if you're not looking necessarily at the bigger picture, the why, it's like, okay, yes, there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be lots of problems. But is that problem now is or the like multiple problems that you have now, are those contributing to your why or the end result? And there's probably lots of cases where they might not be, or they're still important, but maybe other priorities should be addressed. And I like that you mentioned that because sometimes that happens, like happens in real life all the time. But if we don't have that kind of like that compass, that North Star, so to speak, then
Exactly.
sometimes we can easily get set off course.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so you so I mean in terms of can you in broad terms, obviously you don't want you to give away any trade secrets or anything, but what how is it you address those issues for developers, teams of all sizes? What is your goal in that situation?
Yeah, and I mean, and this is applicable to, I would say, just about anybody, and not even just as specific to developers, but also it could apply to anyone, anywhere, personally, business, any industry. But how I break it down is simply like, well, first is direction. Like, what is your direction? Like, and it comes down to simple things. What's your vision? What's your goals? And then and defining those things further. A lot of times it just takes something as, hey, I really want to accomplish this thing, and then working back from that and then breaking those things down into smaller goals. Because when we talk about goal setting and things, it can often be a challenge sometimes where, hey, we may have really big pictures and things that we want to address and tackle, but the reality is if we only look at it just the big picture, that like, if you're climbing a mountain per se, right? Or going on a very long hike and you've never hiked before, knowing what that destination is could be kind of daunting and throw you off. But if you break it down what that goal is and then into little steps, you're going to gain confidence, you're going to make progress, and then you have that feedback loop, which even gets into psychology, that's pushing you forward. And I would say another, so having that defined vision, direction, and breaking down those goals is one of the main ones. The other is like, leading with intent. And I would say as it applies to developers in particular, but again, this relates to I think a lot of different areas as well, is like what's your audience, who are you serving, and what are their needs? Because a lot of times I think we get so caught up again in the details, we forget kind of the again the why are we doing this? And is it to provide experiences or justification for ourselves, or are we trying to provide others with experiences, meaningful experiences that have impact on whatever communities that we're involved with? And usually that is the case, one reason or another. If but what we don't realize and a lot of people forget is a lot of times our intent is almost a little bit more self-serving. Now, it's not to say we're all egotistical people out there, but the reality quickly becomes, oh, wait, I'm doing this more for me. Even though, if you ever ask me, yeah, I want to provide great experiences for lots of people out there, but yet the focus is really on what I'm doing, getting caught in the weeds. I'm not realizing I'm not necessarily serving or doing this for others. And to be able to drill down into further, you just need to understand your audience and what their needs are, and then ultimately you'll see how those things all align. What your interests and what you want to accomplish then align with what these audiences needs, in this case players needs, are. And then the last thing I would say, and it relates a lot to what I just talked about with intent, is having empathy.
Mm,
This is like, I feel like this is a key component that we tend to forget a lot about because we get busy in our lives, we get busy in our work, whatever it may be. But allowing yourself to just put yourself in someone else's shoes, to look at things in different perspectives from different people, especially the people you're looking to serve, and then things start becoming a little bit more clear. You start
mm,
thinking a little bit differently. Not just differently, but I think it allows things to become even more creative, which I think is an important factor because some of the struggles I know a lot of indie developers or studios have is they might look at marketing or even business related stuff as either taboo or that's too corporate or whatever. It removes the artistic side of the actual work that they're doing, the creativeness. But then
mm.
if you look at things from an empathetic point of view, again, it gets those gears going. And then now you start realizing, hey, maybe I still don't like doing some of these tasks and responsibilities that I need to do. But at the same time, now if I'm looking at this way, it starts getting us to think a little bit more creative about that process, and also the importance of how it relates to not just our goals as creators, but also um, how we're actually serving that need to that audience. And again, it's becomes more fulfilling, and it just simply aligns a lot better. So those are the three things I would say that at a high level, how what's kind of missing and what people can do to kind of start getting in line and again understanding that why, and then getting into the how, which is a lot more tactical and everything else.
This is it's sort of uncanny because as a filmmaker, indie filmmaker, I got involved in a program that's very similar to yours, and because now you have to put as much energy into s- getting the film to the audience as I did, when I was making the film, and it's an intimidating mountain of things I didn't know. That just 5 months ago, I had no idea what I was doing, and then having someone with some insight and some perspective to be able to talk you through it, it was an absolute revelation. I mean, success is still like something that comes out of me, and maybe the film doesn't connect, but I feel better equipped to find an audience now, and it's such a difference in confidence. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, and you make a really great point here too, because what you just described from your own experience too, it's through these things, through this process essentially, where if I mean, there's a lot of analysis and things that can be done, but ultimately it's kind of like asking you could it could be as simple as asking yourself questions. And in doing this, and obviously it can be really helpful if you have resources or guides along this process too. But ultimately, what you just defined is, hey, look, I started out with something, and then through this process or this help that I received, now I have clarity. And even if you're not necessarily nailing down, quite hitting the marks you want, or not even hitting your goals, that clarity is so rewarding in itself. Because what it does is it gives you a better understanding and perspective of how to address these problems that you're facing. You're leading with confidence, and then even if things don't go to plan or whatever, uh, like the thing I call out to a lot sometimes is you're better off making a bad decision now than never making a decision. Right. So
Right.
even so that clarity can help with that, because I mean, let's face it, we're all going to fail at something that we're doing. It's just part of the process. But if
Right.
you're dragging your feet and trying to commit to something and you never do, well, you're just never going to learn. And then when everybody else is going, it's not that they're doing better than you, they're just failing faster, as one example.
It's like you're quoting somebody. One of our friends back in it was actually in Keene, New Hampshire. He said he had an entrepreneur friend saying, the trick to being an entrepreneur is to fail fast. And it's
Yeah.
and obviously not to repeat the mistakes you just made, but that's the thing. You only learn from experience, and the quicker you can acquire experience, the faster you learn. It's as simple as that. And fear of failure is crippling. It's just
Yeah.
crippling.
It
And
really is.
I like to believe I'm immune, but then it happens. You catch yourself in like these little ruts where like, wait, why am I putting this off? It's because it's gonna suck. Yeah, just do it. Just do it, and maybe you won't fail, but if you do, you'll be smarter. And it's and having that confidence of pitfalls behind you is yeah, it's easy to describe, but it's better to feel. It is very good to know that there's knowledge in there that has come from experience. It's just great. So I mean, obviously today's recent weeks, months, it's been a volatile time to be in game dev. And you just got back from GDC, the Game Developers Conference. What was the feeling you got from conversations you had there in terms of I don't know, it is it a, is it as bad a time to be an indie dev as it sounds right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I look at things. I always look at things as the glass is half full, and yeah. So what you're alluding to and everything is like, hey, there's been tons of layoffs within the industry for any number of reasons. The main one was being, just there's a lot of criticisms of companies, and I'm not necessarily standing up for them either in terms of the
Mhm.
decisions that they make, but just that, oh, it's just a corporate thing. They're catering to shareholders and things like that, and then it's like a trickle down effect. So the people who don't typically have these other objectives that they need to kind of adhere to and follow, it's affecting them. So despite all these, this turmoil and everything else, I the sense that I got is looking a little bit more positive, but in a different way. What I mean by that is, yes, these things still stink. They're still happening. Like I know there's been some announcements earlier of other significant studios that like prominent ones that are laying off more people, but a lot from at least the developers that I have spoken with and the conversations I had during GDC, I think there's a few things. One, I mean, being an independent anything, but a studio or game dev, it's a uphill battle and challenge anyways. So but the understanding there is you need to know and find ways to be resourceful. And I think that's always been the case with indie studios and indie devs. And I would probably say the same for anybody else who's out there doing something, creating something within in an independent capacity. So I think because of that, even though things are like fluctuating and shifting quite a bit, there's still the that resilience, that concept, that idea behind it makes it so it's like, all right, well, okay, things suck a bit more, but that's not necessarily going to change what I do or how I go about doing it. At least that's the sentiment that I got from the people that I spoke with. The other side too is just I think people see in light of this and probably a lot of other things that are going on in the industry as it relates to what we're talking about a little bit today in marketing and stuff and shying away. I think it's getting to a point where people are now seeing these changes and are really thinking more about how else can these things change? How else
Mhm.
can it be done? So I would say it's more of a greater community initiative in a way. I mean, in some ways, I can relate it to the work that you're doing, to
Mhm.
having these types of conversations and stuff. And I was talking to a lot of different people from various areas of the industry, and there are people that are realizing this, and I think there's essentially a new initiative of people like coming together and finding out ways how do we go about solving these types of problems, providing more support or resources or understanding, it's not just about helping other people find jobs. It's more about revitalizing that ecosystem,
Right.
and everything else where things are going to come together and be more beneficial for everybody in the industry. So even though like things for a while had a level of uncertainty, almost like doom and gloom, at least from what I'm getting, and there's still people that may feel that way, but I'm feeling from these conversations and even previous ones and even up until now that it's gonna change. I'm hoping that we hit the absolute bottom here, but as far as I'm concerned, even if we haven't quite yet, there's nowhere else to go but up. So, but again, that's my own perspective of things. I'm sure people might think a little bit differently, but that's the gist that I got.
I've heard similar phrasing. I've heard similar sentiments said in much bleaker phrasing. Is it? It can only get better. Is it? It does seem a little bit of a pitch right now. But I mean, so it's a very encouraging thing to hear you saying like there are people who are their minds on the problem, looking for solutions to revitalize a community and was an ecosystem. It's out of that. So generally, in these conversations I've been having, like there would be like the best case scenario question, and maybe I can ask you to like extrapolate from the conversations you've been having at GDC. What is a tone? What have been some of the bigger ideas or the notions a direction like that could take? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, so like here, this is one I had actually just recently where I was speaking to this individual, and we weren't necessarily talking about the topics at hand, but it kind of came up organically in what they were doing. This is a solo developer who has, to be quite honest, a very promising project. I'm really excited for it, and it was the first time I saw it. But what I found super interesting, it wasn't so much about the work they put into this project, the actual thought and detail and everything else. They're doing a lot of things that I think are very right. But what's even more interesting and a perfect example of kind of the things I was just alluding to a moment ago was that he identified, you know, the problems and issues that are happening, right?
Mhm.
So what he decided to do to give back to the community was essentially set up, an educational uh, resource. Basically, had a YouTube channel, and over the time, he kept doing that, and all he was basically doing was kinda documenting the project that he was working on, sharing
Mhm.
information, educating people, so anybody from new developers to existing developers just to hone their skills. But what he did was take it a step further because he acknowledged that, "Hey, look, I'm a solo dev. I don't have the means to hire a whole, team right now and become this, like, bigger studio, but, uh" and when I hire these
Sorry.
contractors,
Go ahead.
um, it could be a 6-month term, and then they're
Right.
done, right? And then they're back on the market, and the cycle continues. And he's like, "But I don't necessarily like that concept, and it's a big problem that we're seeing right now at a different scale, a much more dynamic one, so to speak." So
Right.
he's like, "Well, what can I do to change that?" So instead of just providing a source where, a YouTube channel, and they monetize this simply through, I think, whatever they may get from YouTube, but other means like Patreon. But
Mm.
then because of the support, because of this focus on, creating this ecosystem and transparency, the people that he hires from the best of my understanding at least, he then puts these into more entity or more of a focus of educational. So when they don't have something that they're working on directly related to the project, they're giving back to the community by educator in the form of like education. I believe he also mentioned mentorships, things along those lines. And because the community really supports this, they're gaining
Mm.
skills and a lot of other helpful and beneficial information that now feeds into the Patreon. And because of this model, and again, so what he did is like anybody can go up, say, "Hey, I released this game, or I've done this, I documented this, and I'll create a channel, or maybe I'll make a course, whatever." But he took it a step further. It's like, how can I use this to actually fuel this ecosystem? So it's not like we're putting talent back out on the market and everybody's going back and forth and all this different thing. How do I keep this maintained? And it sounds like it's not only helping these other creators that are making his project a possibility, but it's getting to a point now where it's not but it's also at least providing some types of you know substan or a good amount of income to continue to fuel the development of the project. Now, they're still looking for support from publishers and things like that, but the point is, it's creating this ecosystem. So it's like I'm keeping people on staff and when I need them, essentially, and then it's giving back to the project, so it's not slowed because it's limited resources. And I thought it was remarkable because no one else is really doing anything like that, at least to the best of my knowledge. And that's a great example of what some of these people are doing, thinking, diving a little bit deeper and finding new and creative ways to support ecosystems that when, crap hits the fan, at least he has something and then he's more than open to sharing with others that, hey, this is a way that could possibly make it work. Is it for everybody? No, probably not, but at least it's another idea and another way to approach these problems that are, what we tend to find is systemic.
It's an interesting way of like it's like turning the soil, right? It's like it's nurturing. It's something that I mean I get it. It's also getting maximum value out of your assets. is what it is. It's very
Right.
smart. It's very it's thinking it's a lateral solution to a problem. I think it's great. I'm very excited about that. I mean, I did something similar. I had a Patreon. Like the film itself was supposed to be the intent of like Heartbeat was like to demystify like the game design process, which has now become like a bigger issue. I feel like nobody has any idea what game developers do at all. So, but also I had a Patreon page that is like to demystify the filmmaking process because really, when you get talking to people at parties, they have no idea what editors do, which is fair enough. Why should they? But it starts to get a little frustrating. So it's created a little. I mean, I would do it differently now. I think I made it a bit too much of a walled garden. But the people who've been supporting that Patreon page have been fantastic and engaged, and it's really good. It's like during like the darker times, like during lockdown, which hopefully we'll never have again.
Hmm.
They were my community. I always had an audience. I wasn't getting a whole lot of money. It was maybe paying for my internet connection, but just to know I was meeting deadlines every month because I had an audience there, and I take that seriously. I'm here to deliver, and it kept my head straight,
Well,
I mean, so it's that kind of thing because it was a feedback loop. It was good.
yeah. And what you called out to is another great thing too, because we sometimes look at these things like, oh well, uh, again, like, don't necessarily look at it just for a means like, oh, let's create some sustainability means and basically more money, right?
Mm,
Because I think that's the wrong way to approach it. Because again, this goes back to the why that we talked about earlier, and other things that happen too is like what habits are formed. Like you just called out, it's like, okay, well, it's almost like I got this deadline, I got to push for it. If you're on board, you're committed, and you do these things, the next thing you know, you get in this habit. And then when you look at other things, let's say that don't require as much work,
mm,
then you're like, "Oh, well, confidence-wise, you think back, well, I can do that, and this thing is nowhere near as much work as this. So now it makes it easier." And then again, it's that positive feedback loop. You keep getting that confidence and everything else. So even things like this, we don't generally look at as they could be a lot more powerful than what the initial objective behind them actually is, and
mm.
just driving a lot more success or results, whatever, throughout everything that you're doing.
I think that's a really good place to leave it. Thank you very much, Andrew. Can you just quickly tell us the name of your company? Is there a website or someone we should visit to get more information about what you do?
Sure. There's two places. One would be my website, which is rengenmarketing.com. Pretty straightforward, easy to get to, and has, there's a blog there, other resources and information. And through that, or you can also check out my podcast where I talk a lot about these types of topics we discussed today, which is Indie Game Movement, which is the podcast about the marketing and business of indie games, where I myself am the host and interview a lot of industry veterans and developers in the industry, talking about some different perspectives as it applies to marketing and the business of indie games.
It's an excellent podcast. It's the beacon that led me to you.
Well, thank you.
Uh, anyway, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate your insight. I really appreciate your positivity. I like the fact that just because you don't always see the path doesn't mean there isn't one.
Mm.
And yeah, and tenacity and your kind of the kind of clarity you bring to people, I know for sure that it helps. So
Well,
thank you
thank
again.
you.
Good luck and continue with your good work.
Thank you.